Good evening, everyone. My name is Donovan Olvera. I am the Deputy Chief of Police for Field Services Bureau. Thank you all for attending tonight's town hall with Commander Arturo Sanchez and his officers from the Northwest Area Command. In order to have an open dialogue, our officers must be honest and sincere to those questions asked of them. We look forward to the different topics discussed tonight. During our past town halls, we have received a lot of questions about crime. And although that is not what these town halls are focused on, we are planning a larger town hall in early June with Chief Medina to specifically talk about crime and address concerns you may have. Please check back on our Facebook page for details on that event. I will now introduce Dr. Harold Bailey, who will be moderating tonight's town hall event. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. I'm Harold Bailey, your facilitator for this evening's town hall. Welcome to another community town hall sponsored by the Albuquerque Police Department and Chief Harold Medina. I want to thank my co-facilitator, Pastor David Walker, for doing an excellent job on the prior town halls. He covered important issues surrounding racism and historical police brutality directed against Black men and sometimes Black women. Pastor Walker also emphasized the need for the Black community and other communities to work with APD to reduce crime, establish community partnerships, and work to improve trust. Again, thank you, Pastor Walker, for providing us with a good foundation to continue these needed discussions between APD and target communities. This evening, we have Commander Arturo Sanchez of the Northwest Area Command and his staff. We will also have Mr. Jeff Miller and Mr. Tom Borst of the Northwest Area Community Policing Council, who will provide special comments a little later on in the meeting. Commander Sanchez, can you introduce your staff and have them tell us a little bit about themselves and live time being a police officer?
Yes, so my name is Arturo Sanchez. I am the commander of the Northwest Area Command. I've been with the department for a little over 20 years. I had previous experience as a police officer in Virginia. During my time here, I've been in different positions in different areas of the department. I do want to thank everybody for being here. I do believe that this is very important. I'm glad that we're finally doing a town hall like this so that we can continue having our communication with all of you in the community. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is about understanding each other's viewpoints. It's about respecting each other as human beings. And it's about creating those partnerships and understanding between all of us. So again, thank you. And I'm going to have the officers introduce themselves.
I'm Officer Bernadette Sanchez. I've been a police officer since 2014. And since then, I've worked my time in the field patrol as a patrol officer.
I'm Officer Leah Lopez. Like, you can kind of see me. Officer Leah Lopez. I've been a police officer since 2016. I've spent my career in the Field Service Bureau. This is my first bid in the Northwest Area Command. I've worked Northwest, Southeast, and Valley.
I'm Officer Dave Denman. I've got 4 years with APD. I primarily worked in the Northwest Area Command. I've had some stints in the Northeast and the foothills, but I came back to the Northwest Area Command recently, a few months ago, as a member of the problem response team under Sergeant George Gabaldon.
I'm Officer Mike Harrison. I've been on the department since 2007. Most of my years were on graveyard. Now I'm day shift. I'm happy to be on days and help my community.
Okay, the purpose of the town halls, I want to just kind of clarify a few things. Number one is to provide the opportunity for APD to engage with different minorities in the community. 2, to engage area commands to establish effective and lasting community partnerships. 3, to develop collective strategies to reduce crime in our respective communities. 4, discuss how we can restore and maintain trust between minority communities and APD. 5, provide APD with suggestions on how to recruit more minorities and women to be police service aides and police officers. So during our question and answer period, the audience can submit questions through our chat room, and we'd be more than happy to respond to them. And after our panel discussion, I ask that we leave this town hall with specific action items. We don't want to just sit up here and talk without having something to do once it's over. So please submit suggestions through our chat room and provide us with your strategies to address the following. One, how can APD better address the alarming incidents of hate and violence directed against Asian, Chinese, and Pacific Islanders and the LGBTQ-Trans communities? Two, how can we establish effective and lasting community relationships with APD? Three, how can a more effective communications network between APD and the community be developed? How can APD better respond to community needs? Five, what can we do to gain each other's respect? So we go off into the questions. Number one, Commander Sanchez, can you provide us with a short overview of Chief Harold Medina's Community Ambassadors Program and what is it designed to do?
And, one of the ambassador program is a program that Chief Medina's and some of the other executive staff put together, and in order to create and improve those relationships with different minority groups within the community and really the whole community. The idea behind the ambassador program is that we have representatives and ambassadors that have that are the liaison with certain groups in our community. And again, at the end of the day, the most important thing about some of these initiatives that we have, such as the ambassador program, is about trying to have an understanding between us and the community, and have a more respect between each other. And I think at the end of the day, communicate, because I think that is one of the things that I have seen in my career is sometimes a lack of communication that leads to that mistrust, and being able to have that transparency too. So that's just a little bit about the ambassador program.
Okay. Anyone want to add to that? Okay, we'll go on to the next question. Okay, there are concerns in the community that APD has some issues fairly addressing use of force incidents and controversial shootings. What can the panelists say to help the community have confidence that your efforts are genuine and constitutional?
I think I can speak for almost every officer in the city when I say that nobody comes to work wanting to get in a use of force, to have to get in a fight. I can personally say that I pride myself on not getting into many, but sometimes it happens. There are certain instances where we cannot walk away, where we have a duty to intervene or to take someone into custody, and sometimes people don't want to go. And I think it's important to remember that every one of the officers that you might see on some viral video or in some high stress, high demand situation like that is a human being. We're just people. We're people doing a job. We're people pursuing a career. And for many of us, it's a calling. But at the end of the day, we're just fallible men and women. And sometimes it's going to look unpleasant. Sometimes it's going to look ugly. But that we're doing a job that as society, we've decided we need. We need some semblance of order and structure. So when you see these viral videos, please remember that the people you're seeing are someone's mom, someone's dad, or brother or sister. They're just a person.
And just to piggyback off of what you said, like you said, nobody comes to work to get into a use of force. It's very important that not only the officers, when we respond to calls, that the people we deal with on calls know that certain actions have to be dealt with a particular way. We go to every call respectful of people, and sometimes we don't get that in return. And not saying that to justify the minimum amount of force that we use, because that's what we do. We use the minimal amount of force necessary to overcome the resistance. So the videos that you guys see, you only get 20 or 30 seconds of that video, and the call could last for 30 or 40 minutes. So you're making judgments based on that little bit of video that you see.
I don't know, and I feel like if people have any sort of questions, you can always go on a ride along.
Amen to that.
And come and see what it's like to sit in the passenger seat of a police officer's car and deal with these people 30 minutes with civilians on a call, rather than watching, like you said, 30 seconds of a video. You can see the entire call from start to finish. But I tell people all the time, if you want to come on a ride along, I'm pretty sure we can set something up and you can see exactly what we deal with every single day. And at the end of the day, like, we still have to maintain our composure. We're still human beings, but we are held to a higher than a lot of other people. So we do have to maintain that professionalism as well. And I don't know, that's just how I feel. I'm like, if somebody wants to criticize 30 seconds of a video, come and sit in my car and do a shift with me. And
There's
you can
also
see.
the civilian police academy too, where you can actually
Yeah.
go through
Mhm.
an actual scenario where you are dressed in a uniform and such, and placed in a situation where you have to make a split-second decision and
Mhm.
react to it. So yeah.
Yeah, and you know, and with what the officers are, I mean, they're 100% right. That most officers that go in, they really do go in because they have the love of serving people, because this is a service profession. However, we do understand that there are those instances and there are those officers that have been involved in really questionable uses of force. We have officers, whether it's been in the department or whether it's been throughout the country, that in my opinion had no business putting on a uniform. And as a profession and as a department and officers, they understand that. They understand that. And again, in me too, in the 20 years that I've been doing this here, I understand that there are going to be those. And a lot of times we may get the question, and even you right now are wondering, are saying, well, we see these incidents that are happening throughout the country, these bad shootings and bad uses of force. Those are very, it's a small number of incidents when you start comparing it to the content, the number of contacts that officers have. But with that being said, we also have to understand that when we make a decision that is not a good decision, or when we make a mistake, it can cost somebody their life. And that is the difference between our profession and some of the other professions that we have, is that one mistake from us, one bad decision, or just one day of coming in not wanting to do and serve the community like we're supposed to, will cost somebody their lives. And that's important that we understand that, and that we understand that when we have a contact with an individual, even though it may just be that small amount of footage in the video, it's important that we maintain that professionalism. And I think almost every officer, every good officer understands that. And that's why these kind of meetings are important, because we do sometimes need to be reminded of the reason why we are truly here. And that is to serve the community.
You made a good point. As far as ride along, I had an opportunity to take some ride alongs, maybe around from 2 a.m. to like 6 a.m. And it gets pretty wild out there. And I have a lot of respect for you, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times, people who approach you, they don't give you that respect, but at the same time, they demand that respect from you. So we have to make sure that the community works on that too.
And we have to do that every single day.
Every day.
And whether one call we see a homicide, and then when we're done with that, at the beginning of our shift, we go and take a domestic violence call. We have to maintain our composure, and at the same time, maintain that professionalism as well. And then at night, go home and be someone's mom. Right. So it's hard.
Okay. Well, we had a question in the chat room. How do people sign up for a ride along? Commander, maybe you can kind of clarify that?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. Obviously, there are a couple of parameters that you have to meet, but the best way to do it is go through the academy and get an interest card from the academy. And I know, like Officer Sanchez said, we do have the civilian academy, which I think is one of the best ways to really get a full understanding, or a better, I don't want to say a full understanding, but a better understanding of some of those actions that the officers take. Or you can always go to any substation and request a ride along from. They still have to go through the academy, but if you come into our substation, we can try to facilitate that to make it a little easier. Again, there are parameters that have to be met. But yeah.
We can do that. Okay, thank you.
And also ride-alongs are good, I feel like, because we're so short right now. And if a call's holding all day long and I finally get there and that person's like, to hear, what took you so long? I'm like, now you can see why it took us so long, because there's 3 of us working tonight and there's 20 calls holding.
Right.
So it's good for people to see why it's a long response time at times for us to get there.
Exactly. So I think this might be a nice time to say that we want to recruit more police service aides and police officers, so to kind of help you do your job. Okay, next question. How can we address the recent increase of violent and brutal assaults directed against Chinese, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders? Physical assaults and property damage. How can we respond to that? I mean, it's an open question to anybody to respond to.
So I think, I think it's it goes back to what I keep saying: communication and respect. And obviously, seeing some of the incidents that have happened nationally in the recent months, it's about reaching out to the community. It's about reaching out to the community and letting them know that we are here to help. And let's face it, there are many, and I know this, having been born in Mexico, and I know a lot of times there, within certain communities, there is a mistrust with the police department. I mean, there is, and that's something where we have to do a better job at communicating with them and being open with them and reaching out, so that we can address those concerns, because a lot of communities don't want to report certain things, and that's where we have to do a better job by reaching out, by having these type of town hall meetings, by having some of the outreach that we have been doing, the ambassador program, again, having that ambassador program that's reaching out to some of these communities is how we are going to do it. It's not just about responding to the call, taking the report, and trying to find out who did it. This goes way beyond that. It goes about building that relationship.
It's gotten to a point in our country where, unfortunately, and we've seen periods like this throughout our country's history, is that we've started to see large percentages of our fellow countrymen as others, not Americans, not members of our community, and be that because of their race, their creed, by what name they call God, by what they do for a living. We've dehumanized them. And I think that the only way we're going to see a big reduction across the board in any kind of hate crime, any kind of racism or racial motivated violence, is it's going to start in the home. It's going to start with parents really enforcing and teaching those lessons in their kids that you are a human being, and that person is a human being, and they have just as much worth as you do. When we get called to an incident of violence or hate, the damage is already done. And we have a job to do. We need to do our job, and we need to do it well, but we are the final step in that process. And it cannot rest completely on us. We have an important job to do, but it is only one step in a much wider solution.
No, I think you're right.
Well said.
Yes, well said. And it starts at home. A lot of issues, we can only solve so many, but we can't fix years of what somebody is taught their child, and then are now an adult and think that same way because that's what they were taught. So yeah, that was good.
Okay. There are also unjustified assaults committed against LGBTQ-Trans individuals in our communities. What's being done in your area command in case a situation like that might come about?
Again, it's the outreach. It's this, and I keep referring back to the ambassador program because it is such. I've looked at some other cities and there's a lot of different things that other communities do, but this to me seems. I think it's just kind of one of a kind programs in the sense that it is geared exactly towards that, because until we start reaching out to that community, there's always going to be that hesitation to call us. There's always going to be that hesitation because they have to be and feel comfortable with coming to us. And so those are some of the things that we're doing within the area command is that outreach, having those relationships with those leaders in those specific communities. And that's what, that's how it starts. It's unless we continue to do that, we're going to continue to see some of the issues that we have seen in the past.
I had an opportunity sitting on some of all of the interviews for the ambassador program, and there are at least 2 ambassadors, community ambassadors, who will be working specifically in the LGBTQ-Trans community. So, it's a good project. Okay, what type of training and educational programs or classes are APD cadets and police officers required to take to better prepare them to serve and protect communities of color and the LGBTQ group and faith-based groups? What type of training or classes or education that you've taken to put yourself in a better position to relate to the community at large?
I think the department does have quite a bit of.
Beyond like the racial profiling classes, we take.
I'm like, there's so many trainings that we
Yeah,
take. I'm like
racking my brain trying to go
Yeah,
back through
because I
that.
know we have.
Yeah, so like with annual training, we get the hate crimes, of course,
Yeah.
in MOE.
Yeah, we just had hate crimes.
Racial profiling.
We do have, I know supervisors at one point, we did end up and although it's not necessarily for that specific, I think part of the mention is what we had called an EPIC program. And really,
Oh, yeah, we had that.
it has to do with officers when they see something that another officer is doing that's, that it's not appropriate. The idea is to be able to show those officers how they can respond, how they can intervene, or how they can report. And I think that's important because, a lot of the concerns and the issues that we see are those, do come from our minority communities. And that's just the reality. Where we, so those are things that the department does, or provide training with those. And, and for us, training is an everyday thing.
Yeah.
So it's us, at least in my area command, is me working with the lieutenants on a daily basis, encouraging the lieutenants to work with their sergeants and their officers and pass on what kind of officers we want to be and make sure that they're talking to their officers and letting them know and ensuring that they're doing the right thing. I think it's, there's a difference between telling officers or telling people to do something and actually having them buy into it and having them wanting to do something. That's the difference. You can tell somebody to do something all the time and they're only going to do it the moment or when they have to. But when you get people or officers to buy into that and really want to do it themselves, that's when you really see the change. And that's something that within the area command, I know myself and the supervisors, is what we do, is make sure that they understand this is why we need to do it.
So we just want to make sure that the police officers are passionate about what they do every day.
And that's important. That's very important.
I think a lot of credit needs to be given to the basic training staff at the academy. It's a hard job, and you're taking young men and women from various walks of life, various backgrounds, and you're trying to turn them into something that is not. It's not really a natural job. What we do is not exactly a comfortable or natural job to do. And I know that in my own experience, I was born and raised in Albuquerque. I lived my entire life in the Northeast states, and my first phase of training out of the police academy, I was in the Central and South Valley area on graveyards on the weekend. And it was a culture shock to me. And I fell back on the training that I had received in the academy on how to just interact with people and deal with people, some people who are in crisis or people who I may not understand immediately and how to empathize correctly. And the training that the academy is providing our young officers in that area in particular really is far and away some of the best training we get.
Okay, do you have any issues involving immigrants and refugees in your command area? Do you have a system set up in place to address these issues if something might come up, immigrants or refugees?
We do. So I think we do as a department as a whole. We don't have, our area command is a little bit, it's just a little bit different. We do have a lot of different cultures, a lot of different ethnicities. And so our area command is, it does have a lot of different people in that community. From different groups, but we don't see it as much in our area command. But we as a department do have those steps in place, whether it's whether it's the complaint through the complaint system to the CPC or but we do have those steps. But I think it's more than that. When we have those situations when there's been, when there's been an issue between the police department and a specific group within the community, I think we as a department are doing a much better job at reaching out and trying to figure out what it was that led to that, to those concerns. I look at some of the for example, today they're doing, there's going to be a peace walk that they're having, I believe today. It's those kind of things. The having that communication when we were with some of the protests, having that communication with those organizers in some of these protests. Those are the steps that we have in place. Now, the more formal step is the being able to file those complaints and being able to bring those grievances.
Okay, so if you do have any issues with immigrants or refugees, I do have a number for you, so we can, I can be a contact person, African refugees, refugees from the Caribbean, things of that nature. So, we're all partners, we're all in this together. So if you need some specific numbers, please feel free to call.
And we do have, and again, we actually have an ambassador for,
That's right.
We have an ambassador in the department for for refugees. We have an ambassador for really anybody. And again, I go to that because the ambassadors, I was in a meeting this morning for community engagement with one of our monitors. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because we were talking about the ambassador program. And one of the things that came up was the fact that his question, which was a good question, was, are these officers getting paid extra to do that? Are they getting incentives to do that? And I knew what the question was being asked because it's a question that I would have asked, is that, are we getting the right people? Are we getting the right officers that are doing it because they really want to be part of it? Or are we getting officers that want to do it for incentives?
Right.
And when they did the interviews, and as you know, it was done knowing some of these officers, they picked the right officers, because many of those officers had already been doing a lot of engagement in those communities. I give you one of our detectives, Luis Hernandez, and Officer Emmanuel Solis. They had been working with the Hispanic community in particular with Mexican nationals. And they had been doing it for years and years and years prior to any of these programs. And so to have them, officers like that have already been involved on their own is how a lot of these officers work.
Okay. How would you describe the relationship between your officers and community in the Northwest Area Command?
I'm gonna let the officers answer that one.
Okay. Not all at once.
I always go first.
Go ahead.
I think it's important not only for, and I'm just speaking for me, everybody else can speak for themselves. For me personally, I put into my mind when I go to a call, how would I want my family member treated? So I treat everybody with respect and give them the best possible service that I can until that's turned, or not turned, or should I say, until I'm given a reason that I should not show you that respect anymore. And by that, I mean, if I'm coming to help somebody and I'm showing you nothing but respect, I don't need somebody to come out to me and cuss me out and yell at me and belittle me while I'm trying to do a service for you. I'm just here to help, you know, and I'm not coming to your house to get beat up or get beat down. You called me and I don't mind coming to your house to help you, but I don't want to be disrespected while I'm at your house. So, with that being said, I treat everybody and I feel I treat everybody with respect. And I just think it's very important for the public to know we're just here doing our job and we're not trying to disrespect anybody and we don't want to be disrespected. So I think as long as that's clear and we understand each other, I think from my perspective, things will run a lot smoother.
Mike, how do you, and I think when and I'll ask is when you go to a call,
Mhm.
how do you think that the area command, the citizens in the area command perceive you, and how do you think for the most part they treat you?
For the most part, I feel like I'm treated pretty well. You know, 90% of the calls that I respond to, there's no issues. There's like 1 out of 20 calls, you know, you might have an issue. So that goes back to as long as you treat people with respect, and 9 times out of 10, they'll do everything that you ask them to do, and there's no issues. But for whatever reason, somebody's having a bad day, and things can go left real quick. So,
And I think it really depends on what circumstances we encounter people.
Yeah.
I can think of a gentleman who our team has arrested before. And there have been days where we've come out with him and just provided service to him as PRT, given him a bus pass or made sure he had shelter for the night or what have you. And we've had great interactions with him. And then there are other times where we've had to arrest this person. And obviously that's going to be something that's going to make him pretty upset. And I understand the reaction we get. Now we still have a job to do. But I think it can go street by street, block by block, house by house, and even person by person within a household as to how we're seen. I feel pretty well respected and treated in the Northwest Area Command. I feel like the majority of the people in the Northwest Area Command truly have our backs and truly care about us as people, not just as their officer. You're always going to have those people who will never appreciate us for what we do, and that's okay. Like, you can't be everybody's friend.
But even in those moments, we still have to act with professionalism and still continue to be respectful, even if, you know, you do get into use of force. That doesn't mean that that's, you know, where your relationship with this person lies. You can still stand them up, dust them off, and take them to jail and respectfully do that. You don't, you know, we don't have to continue to be or carry on this disrespectful role. Because I think that we have to hold ourselves a little bit, you know, at a higher standard where we can keep our composure in those heated moments.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And when that moment is done, then you go to the next call and it could potentially happen again. You never know. So I think that you nailed it, and I'm with you 100%. If, you know, for me personally, when I'm going to calls, I treat it like this could be my mom. This is my, you know, this could be my grandmother. This could be my brother, my sister. And how would I want them to be treated? You know, I want to go that extra mile every single time. And, you know, that's just, I think me personally, that's how I kind of keep ground.
I think a lot of police officers take their calls like that.
Yeah.
Like, how would I be, I mean, I could be taking a call. Bernadette's one of my good friends, Officer Sanchez. Sorry. And so I'm like, okay, how, it would be like taking a call at my friend's house. I'm going to treat that person's family like if I'm taking a call at their family's house. Like, I'm not going to disrespect them. I tell people, just because I wear this uniform doesn't mean I'm not a human being like yourself. Like, this is my job, but this doesn't define me as a person. This is just my profession. And I tell people that all the time. And like they said, I mean, even when someone's screaming at us and disrespecting us, we're still going to treat them with respect. And it's and a lot of it is just experience with the job. You just learn to just do that. And it's just nature to you.
Yeah. Could go back to even how you're raised, you know?
Yeah,
And before you leave, do you need anything? You know, that's not even my job, but do you need anything? You guys
Yeah.
good? All right, we're gonna head out
do you need
now.
anything else
Absolutely.
before we head
Kids
out?
playing hoops in the middle of the street, shoot a
Yep.
couple hoops with them, and then you're on your way to the next
Yep.
ball. And that's just kind of like how I grew up,
Yeah.
honestly.
Okay, what type of training and classes are required for officers to address cultural differences, racism, and diversity? Do you have any classes or training during the academy or professional development plans for cultural diversity, things of that nature?
Every year we're required to take classes, whether it be hate crimes, legal updates, or whatever the academy puts together a curriculum, and that we're required to keep our certification. So we have to stay current on these classes in order to keep our certification.
And then we do have a cultural diversity block in the academy that
Yeah.
has to be maintained.
Mhm.
And again, you know, it's important. It's definitely important to have all those classes. I kind of, as an area commander, and I and just from experience, I look at a lot of that as, classes. It's good. It's good because it's another tool that officers have. But a class is a class. It's about the mindset. It's about more than just what's going on in that class. It's about being able to take that class and being able to really change the mindset, especially those few officers that that are a little bit more resistant to certain things or changes. But it's about changing the mindset. And I said it's just more about what the department does. And aside from the classes, I think it's how the department is trying to change and have been trying to change that culture, that traditional way of thinking in law enforcement, is, by having these programs, by having these conversations, by having that outreach. And, one of the things that I see where as a department that we are doing much better than we used to, is showing the community the things that we do. Because outreach, we do so much. We still got a long ways to go. And this is critical because this is, to me, one of the most important things when it comes to law enforcement is building those relationships and finding solutions to the relations that the police department has with a lot of our in minority groups. And I'm not talking about the department, I'm talking as a profession as a whole. And that is to me, one of the most critical things that we have to definitely work on and do better. Because at the end of the day, crime, it's important. Reducing crime is very, very important, and that's what we have to. But until we are able to do better in that, that's a lot of the work that officers do is not going to mean as much. Our relationships are better.
Okay, it seems like you're doing a lot of good things in the Northwest Area Command. So can you tell us some things you might want to improve on? So it's not a trick question. We all try to do better every day, even though you might be at a good level. So is there anything that you think that the Area Command may need to improve on?
I think there is a lot on my level, but what I would like to do is I actually want each one of these officers to answer that question as to what you as an individual officer would do to improve, or where you think we need to improve as an area command. And I think I can really talk as what I think.
Okay. Me personally, I think engaging with the community, because we can't have that enough. Like Officer Lopez said, there's not that many of us, and sometimes I could drive by a skate park and I see kids out there, and you want to engage with the community and you want to go out and talk to them, but it's just not enough time because we're just call to call half the time, you know? So it's not enough time to engage with the community. I would like to do that more myself, just so I can show people that we're out there and so they can see that we do care, because that's what we're trying to get across to them, you know? And I think the more that they see us out and the more they can engage with us, the more they'll understand that.
Yeah, so I don't like to compare my different area commands, but I know when I worked in the Valley last bit, one of my favorite times was going to the community centers and just hanging out with the kids. Because I was actually raised in the Valley Area Command. I grew up around Broadway and Cesar Chavez area. And when I saw cops growing up, like in our schools, that was huge to me. So I like to give that back to the community. And I love that. We would go hang out with the kids at Dennis Chavez, at East San Jose, wherever. And we'd hang out with them. We'd play games with them. And like, that was a positive that they took home with them in case they see police at their house. They know that, oh, I saw that officer last week and she was like super cool with me. To me, that positive impact on kids is huge. And that's one thing I miss about the Valley is the relationship that we'd build with the kids in their own setting. It's like their after school programs that they would do. And we'd go in and just hang out with them for an hour. And it was like a big deal to them for us to be playing dodgeball with them. That's something that I would like to do. Like now summer's happening and there's summer programs. Cool, let's go hang out at some of the community centers for an hour. But like I said before, there's literally like, I think 3 of us on our squad. So it's kind of impossible when we come in and there's 20 calls holding. But that's something that I would like to do is, and how I can feel like we can benefit the community is by starting with the kids, because that's our future.
Or even being able to go back to, you know, places you've taken reports at or crimes have been committed, you know, to go back and check again on our victims and ask them how they're doing, you know, since the last time you were there. Being able to engage with the community when they're not at their worst day ever, but to come back and be able to say, you know, I wanted to come back and check on you. That's all I'm here for.
I think on a call-to-call basis, one thing is officers that I've seen in myself and I've seen in other officers is because we see a lot of traumatic stuff, we tend to wear a mask. We tend to kind of hide behind our uniforms sometimes, and it's a preservation mechanism where we try to bottle away our feelings. And I'm not saying that we should be sobbing and wailing on calls for service, but to empathize with people on a personal level, to say, you know, understand that they're hurting and to make that personal connection, even if it's just for an extra 5 minutes on a call. I've seen it do wonders for relations between a particular group of officers and maybe a neighborhood or even just one home where we're getting called 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week, maybe even a night, where you take that extra 5, 10 minutes to make that human connection with that person instead of just getting the information you need for a police report or whatever documentation we need to do our jobs within the letter of the law and leaving. And it is hard, and it is especially hard for the field. And I have a lot of empathy for the 3 officers sitting here because they're, unlike me in a specialized unit, you guys are still out there handling those 911 calls. And there isn't a lot of time right now, especially with the manpower we have.
And, you know, me, as an area commander, the things, I think every day we have a lot of work to do. And the moment that I think any of us say that, well, there's nothing that we can change, nothing we can do to improve, I think that's a time that we have to find another profession. Because the moment that we get to that point, it's time for us to go somewhere. So as an area commander, I think the outreach, I know for the most part, our area commander does pretty good, and I think the whole department does a really good job on outreach. But I think there needs to be a little bit more, and you know, in listening to the officers, it's important to know that these things sometimes, because you know, going back nowadays, one of the things that I'm going to figure out and say, okay, now I want my officers to be able to do some of the things that they want by going up to those community centers. What am I going to do? How am I as a commander going to be able to afford Leah the opportunity to go and do that? Because you know, that's something that I have to do better at. I think that when it comes to the building of the relationships, we have to continue and even I think I have to improve more on communicating. I know at times we get to a point where we get spread kind of thin, and so where do we go? But those are the things that we have to work on and do a better job in managing, so that we are able to do that. I know that there's different programs that within an area command that we're doing. For example, in PRT, as part of this is that we're looking at crime. And we saw at the beginning of the year that we were having issues with some of our drive-bys were happening at parties. And so we saw that pattern, and when we sat down, one of the things that I tasked the PRT unit and said, look, we need to start doing some outreach there. We look at at some of these, some of the areas that we were having these issues, and we got a list of, where there were party calls. And it wasn't about anybody doing anything wrong. It was about providing them information. So one of the things that we're doing is that they're gonna go out and talk to those residents and say, look, just so you know, we did have a party call at your house. This is information that you have to be careful with, and this is the things that you have to be careful underage drinking. And the reason I say that is because we had a young lady in one of the parties where there was a party that had happened. The officers responded, but they couldn't really do, it didn't seem like it was that big, nothing big other than a party. Pretty much a month later to the day, there was another party at that same house, and the young lady ended up being shot and she was paralyzed. And so that kind of outreach within the community is really what we needed to do, because one, it's about building those relationships and keeping the community safe.
So one thing that can probably help everyone out is to recruit more police officers and police services, right? So I think we all can do that. Okay, what can the community do to assist you in reducing crime and improving relationships? We've been talking about what you can do, but what can the community do? It's a two-way street.
A lot of times we take calls where there's an auto burglary and people, for whatever reason, are continuing to leave their personal items inside their cars instead of taking them inside their house. And I would recommend and would like to see more people take their personal items out of their vehicles when they leave, so those items aren't missing when they come back. Now, will that stop people from breaking into cars? No, probably not. But at least that way your valuables aren't left behind.
Piggybacking on that, one of the troubling things that we see, and it's not just in the Northwest, it's all across the city, is firearms are being left in vehicles overnight. I took an auto burglary about a year ago where 4 different firearms were taken out of the same vehicle. 2 of those firearms were in plain view. And those guns are now in whoever's hands. And as a gun owner myself, I shudder thinking about the fact of one of the firearms that I own being used to commit a violent crime because I failed to secure it. So remind yourselves, remind your friends, and it doesn't have to be punitive or in a scolding way. Just say, hey man, make sure you're locking that up, because at the end of the day, we're all responsible for our belongings. Does it mean that we deserve to be victimized? No, it doesn't. But that's a very troubling trend in this town, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah, it's like inviting, even when you just leave a backpack in the back seat of your car. That's inviting for someone to wonder what's inside that backpack, break your window, and then take off with your backpack that's filled with schoolwork. Even phone chargers, I'm like, unplug it, wrap it up, throw it in your little console. That way it's not showing, because even a phone charger, I wonder if something's hooked on the other end that's under the seat on the phone charger. Again, they're going to break your windows to take that out. So like you said, keep all your belongings out of sight. I mean, if you're going to keep stuff in your car, like try to figure out a way to stash it, but at the same time, just don't keep stuff that's valuable in your car. Because it's inviting for somebody walking by. Oh, cool. Smash that window and take that backpack out of the back seat.
Only takes seconds to
It
do.
does, yeah, and they're gone.
Seconds.
Okay, what is your opinion on defunding the police or the redistribution of resources? Yeah, that's just-
Defunding?
Yeah, that's a term or a word that people have been saying, let's
Well, I mean, where are you gonna
defund
call when you have an emergency if you're defunding police? I mean, cause you're calling police because you can't solve that problem yourself, right? So if you can't do that, like, who are they gonna call if they can't call us?
I think one of the main things that I've talked to, and I've heard people say, well, we should defund the police and reallocate resources. In the same breath, they'll say the police need to be trained better. This is an either or. You can either train us better because training costs money, it costs time. The best training, you're going to be bringing in instructors maybe from around the country. But at minimum, you're going to be pulling people out of the field to go to class, to go get training. You may have to have overtime. It's going to cost money. And at the same time, you want to slash the bottom line. Now, are there things that as officers, we maybe shouldn't be going out to? I think anybody who's taking a call for service with the Albuquerque Police Department would say yeah to that. And I think, being bluntly honest, some of that falls back on the community. Is this necessarily something that I need a uniformed police officer for? Well, at the same time, it falls back on us to understand the limitations of our job. But if you want to defund the police department, there are going to be good and bad consequences out of that. One of the bad consequences out of that, and it is a bad consequence, and it's a hill I'm happy to die on, is that the training is going to suffer. The quality of your applicants is going to suffer. Your ability to provide a competitive salary to your applicants, because that's a very real thing. Albuquerque Police Department pays its officers well. It's why, one of the reasons I'm here. I have to make a living. If we slash budgets, salaries are going to fall. And the quality of the applicants, because we want the best people to be officers, not the worst, not the least motivated. The quality of your applicants will fall. There are very serious consequences that are not being addressed and considered when we speak about this.
I think with defunding the police comes like, it kind of delegitimizes policing as a whole, which then the crime rates are just gonna skyrocket, which we will all suffer from.
Yeah.
Including myself, you, everybody here.
So,
Commander?
it's defunding the police. It's a very interesting thing. Is that we as a community. When I say as a community, I mean I'm talking about as a nation. We came up with we came up with this idea that we were going to, the solution to the problem was going to be that we defund the police department, right? And you look at how, at what that means. Well, defunding the police department means different things to different people in different areas. It just really depends. But we look at trying to find a solution to a much larger problem. And when this, when I started hearing about defunding the police, I really started looking into what does that mean? What exactly does that mean? And I think as a nation, and even as a police department, we failed our community, because when we started talking about defunding the police, we didn't give what that meant. We didn't say, what does it mean? We didn't say, here's the effect that it's gonna have, the negative effect or the positive effect. And I say we, as a department and as a government entity, we failed by not communicating, not trying to look at this and say, what is it? Because in my opinion, it was a solution. To me, it was a quick solution to a much bigger problem in our nation. Because we have a police department, any police department, and we say, you know what, we're gonna take your money and that means less officers, right? But does it change the mindset? It is about changing the mindset. It is about changing how we interact with our community. That is the key. It's not about, money has an effect on any agency, but it is a different effect than the mindset and getting and building those relationships, building those bridges with the community, being transparent with the community, and being able to get up there and say, part of that is being able to get up there and say, look, we had this incident, we had this thing happen. We made a mistake. We made a mistake, we made a bad decision, and that's where a lot of departments have failed, in my opinion, where they have not been transparent with the community to say, yes, we made a mistake, here's how we're gonna fix it. But the funding, again, it is something that will affect all of the community as a whole.
Okay. Well, you know, we all need police to serve and protect. So what about the redistribution of resources? For example, you know, crisis management, social workers, things of that nature. You know, you may have the same amount of money, but you just redistribute certain things to address certain issues. You know what I'm saying? So I think we can all agree that we need police. You can't call Ghostbusters if something happens, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, I agree.
And that right there, and you make a very good point, sir. And that right there is exactly where I talked about how we, you know, where we explained it. When people talk about defunding, it's not about just taking money away. It is exactly that. I believe that, I do. I believe that there are certain things within a police department, certain things that don't need to be a police department. And I do believe, you know, the new communities, that new safety program, the new safety department that the department is looking at, that to me is, I believe in that. I believe that we should have certain things when it comes to, you know, when it comes to mental health and how we, you know, and what areas an officer should be going to and what should be a you know, somebody who's not a sworn officer and should be a community, I call it a community response, because yes, we may have this department that's going to be looking at responding to certain things, right? But it's more than that. It's because they have resources outside of that department, you know, the mental health organizations and a lot of different resources that are not from the police department. Yes, and so those, I believe that those are important, and I think that we should be doing that. I think we should be, if we were to reduce, and I, you know, the truth is, if we were to reduce a certain part of our department, let's say we reduce the number of calls for service by a certain amount, because we now have a new department that's going out to handle some of these things. I want all the money that we can get for our officers, absolutely. But is it fair and is it fiscally responsible to say, well, we're still going to maintain that same budget when there's no longer? So to me, that is not defunding the police. That is using our resources much better and being fiscally responsible to the community.
Okay, so creative management. You know,
And
just be creative.
it is, and it's not, that's why I'll be honest, I do not like that word, defunding the police, because it's really, it gives a perception to the whole community that what a group or organization wants is to take away from the police department. I mean, and there are some instances, and that we've seen that some departments have had to go through that where they have lost money. I don't think this is something that you know, that our community here is really it really is what they mean when they talk about defunding, which it is different.
Okay, getting back to the last question, maybe, do you have any comments on the Black Lives Matter movement? You know, that's been a topic of discussion. What are some of your concerns about that movement? Anyone can respond to that.
I think that as officers, we have to recognize that there have been periods in this country where our profession has not been what we want it to be. And that there have been things that have happened and things that have been done at the hands of police officers to members of the Black community that have been wrong and that have been highly hurtful and destructive. But at the same time, it comes back to, I think, the first thing I said during this town hall. I'm a person. I'm a human being. I'm not just a cop. I am a son, a brother. And when I go out, it feels arrogant to say, but I'm not looking for color. I'm looking for a situation that through my training and experience and what I've been equipped to do, that I can help. I've arrested people of every color. I've talked to people of every color. And I can say with complete sincerity and conviction that I have not looked down upon another man for the color of his skin or by what name he calls God or any differing factor. I've tried as hard as I can to provide that level of service. And what breaks my heart is standing on a protest line and being told by someone that I hate people when I know I don't. I know that I don't hate people for the color of their skin, but being told that I do produces this sick feeling because I know it's not the truth, but I know that there are people whose minds I'll never change, who have made up their mind. And it troubles me greatly because I think that they're going to be teaching their children that and their children's children and so on. And we're going to have generations of people who grow up truly believing that any man or woman who wears this uniform and this patch is out there to oppress and to hurt and to beat down, when instead our job is to pour into our communities so that they are safe places to live.
Okay, any other comments?
I agree. I mean, I think it's pretty well said. I respect people, whatever color they may be. I'm colorblind. I was raised in Broadway and Cesar Chavez area. I went to Eugene Field. I went to Albuquerque High. It was a melting pot there. And like Officer Denman said, like, I don't see color when I talk to people. I look to see how I can help them. And with that being said, I just feel like during that time when he was talking about the protests and stuff, we respect everybody, whether they're Black Lives Matter, whether they're part of whatever community they're part of, we still respect them. But at the same time, show us that same respect that we're respecting you. No matter what group you're a part of. Like, we're not out here protesting. Cops are not protesting any group. So it would be nice to be shown the same respect that we show everybody else, no matter what they are.
Any other comments?
So I think, it's, and the officers said it for the most part, but I think it's important, again, it goes back to most officers that don't want to, they don't want to come in and get any use of force. Most officers don't want to have an argument and work with anybody. And it's the same one with that. Most officers respect everybody's freedom of speech, their First Amendment right, everybody, to be able to express, even if it is against us. And that is important because, we look at a lot of the changes throughout our country and our history, and it has been as a result of somebody standing up. Now, I think that's important, regardless of what group it is, whether it's BLM, whether, whatever group it is. It's important to know that many of the changes in our country throughout our history have been because people have stood up. That being said, what Leah mentioned is that it is very, very important that we show that respect between each other and understand those differences, because it is, you had asked earlier what the community could do for us. Those are the things that the community can do for us is just understanding that we also have different viewpoints. We will never take those viewpoints, and no officer should, and most officers won't, to make decisions while they're working, but there has to be that respect. There has to be that respect to say, you know what? I'm standing across the line from this officer right here. And although I am going to make my voice heard, I have to understand that it's not necessarily him who is causing me harm. And until we start showing each other that respect, not about black, white, or anything, about human beings. And the reality is that we have lost some of that respect to treat each other like a human being. So that's my.
Okay. Do we have representatives from the Community Policing Council yet? Mr. Jeff Miller or Tom Boris? Okay, do we have any final comments, Commander and the staff? Anything that we didn't cover? Any final comments you might want to make before I have some closing comments?
I don't know, I mean, just if you ever want to see like what it's like in a shift of Officer Leo Lopez, come on a ride along and you'll see. And I mean, you'll get to know me as a person.
Yeah.
Not only as a cop, but as a person. You'll know that I'm a mom, I'm a single mom. I've been doing everything by myself for the last, I don't know how many years. And you'll get to know me as a person, not just as a police officer. And you'll see I treat people with respect. I'll tell you where I was born and raised. Like,
I was raised in the same neighborhood, Albuquerque, Boulevard, all right.
South Valley, Rio Grande Ravens.
yeah, so I mean, we all have different backgrounds, and I mean, and you'll see officers treat people with respect, even though we're not always given that same respect. You don't know my background. You don't know like who I go home to. You don't know like who I surround myself with. So it's like just, and the same as the people we encounter, I don't know anything about them, but I'm still going to respect them. Even if they are shouting in our faces, we're still going to respect them. It would just be nice to have that same respect shown towards us.
And one thing I'll add to that is, sometimes the public gets upset because officers come out to their residents numerous times for whatever the case may be, but we're not all the same. The previous officer you feel may have treated you poorly, but the next officer is not that previous officer or that officer that was out with you before. So you just have to remember that. I mean, because again, like she said, we respect everybody and we go out to respect everybody, but we're not all the same. If you felt you were mistreated before, don't expect the same treatment again when another officer comes out, because the circumstances could be different and you get treated a whole different way.
First of all, I just want to thank everybody. I really appreciate everybody that's here. I think these conversations are so important. And these are just, in my opinion, the first steps that we need to take, not just as a police department, but as a community. And I hope that we can continue to do these town halls, with, and not just, this is one of the most important issues that we definitely need to continue talking about. But I think it's also good to continue these town halls on other issues. I will tell you that I, as an officer, as a commander, and just as a human being, owe you to serve you and ensure that my officers and myself are providing you the service that you deserve and treating you with respect. And I know we have a long ways to go. There's still a lot of challenges that we have to face as a community. But I give you my word that we are going to continue. We are going to continue to move forward, to improve, do better, and again, get to a point where we all treat each other like human beings and we treat each other with respect. Again, thank you, and I hope everybody has a good evening.
Okay, well, thank you, Commander, and thank you, officers. We appreciate it. I'd like to have some closing comments. We all have a stake in being protectors of our respective neighborhoods and must accept our differences and work in concert to serve and protect. APD cannot do it alone. We can decide to be positive change agents or complainers. Embrace diversity and inclusion. Finally, let's all work together to make Albuquerque a safer, more caring city and not worry about who gets the credit. So please submit your proposed strategies that would help improve the relationship and trust between APD and the community. Put them in our chat room and make sure that the commanders will follow up on it. And thank you for your time and participation in APD's Community Town Hall project. Good evening.